Welcome to the Mischief Maker broadcast, where chaos, creativity, and common sense collide. Your host, Joel Freeman, was kicked out of high school in Alberta, Canada. He left home at 17 and hitchhiked around North America as a long-haired hippie and dope-smoking fool. He made a 180-degree change, becoming one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. As a professional speaker, Joel has traveled to well over 55 countries. His many books have been published in 28 foreign translations. Pieces from his Black History collection have been seen by millions at the United Nations and many other venues. And now, the Chief Mischief Maker himself, Dr. Joel A. Freeman.
Hey guys, Baby Joel here. Guess what? The older version of me told a joke over a Zoom meeting last week, but nobody laughed. Turns out, he's not remotely funny.
Well, yes, that's true. That's true. Welcome. This is going to be a show of shows. I have a dear friend, Elizabeth Meaders. She's on with us tonight, and I just can't wait. I'm not going to talk very much because I want to get us through into bringing her on board on the show here. I have in my hand a booklet with Elizabeth Meaders here, right there. And she's standing next to the Bill Pickett bulldogging for his movie, a movie poster. All this stuff is authentic, by the way. No reproductions. Bill Pickett saddle. It just goes on and on. And when you start opening up the booklet, you're just looking at all kinds of artifacts and just items that just, like one woman said to me, she says, it's like going from gasp to gasp. And so you want to lean in a little bit. I don't care where you are in the world, India, Japan, Australia, across the fruited plains of Canada, Europe, UK, US, the fruited plains of US and UK and all the rest. Please take some time tonight to really learn a lot about history, number one, and number two, about a fascinating woman who has cobbled all of this together over 60 years. I'm not going to tell her age. It's never polite to tell a woman's age or ask a woman her age, but I'll give her permission if she wants to tell her age. She's welcome to do so. Born in Staten Island, in New York, lived there all her life. A member of a prominent Staten Island family that's mentioned in official books of Staten Island history. Her family traces its roots back to the 1700s. And a family member was the last freed slave in Staten Island. There's two large public schools, a library, a street, and a military installation are all named after her family members. She taught in a school named in the honor of her grandfather, and she's appeared on many TV stations, cable channels, radio stations, print media. New York Times did a 2-page spread about her collection. And last month, a local newspaper in New York did a 2-page story about the collection. She just finished a film, a documentary called The Rebuttal. And that won an award, Best Documentary Award. And so it's pretty incredible it featured her collection. She graduated from Hunter College, worked as a New York school teacher for 40 years, elementary school teacher. And she amassed a collection on an elementary school teacher's salary. I want you to think about that. Just plug that in your brain when you start understanding a little bit more about her collection, the magnitude of her collection. I'm going to use a definite article. She's a teacher, so she knows what that is. The most comprehensive Black history collection in the country. And if we're talking about Black American history collection in the world. And so it's just a wonderful thing. As a teenager, I'm going to have her tell stories about Jackie Robinson and the awards, the accolades, how she played sports with her 3 sisters, had a great honor of playing basketball in Madison Square Gardens. And anyway, she's going to share a lot of this kind of stuff. with us today. Now, what we're going to do is, for those of you who have been watching the show, you know that I have a QR code above me, above my shoulder. And if you're not on your cell phone, you're on a laptop or something like that, just get your cell phone out and just put it on the QR code. It'll take you to a place, kind of a link tree that gives you information about the show. What is a Mischief Maker? Why do we call this a Mischief Maker show? How you can become a Mischief Maker in your part of the world. Elizabeth Meaders is a Mischief Maker, believe me. She's the queen of Mischief Makers in so many different ways. So you can learn about the definition and just a lot about our sponsor. I've got some swag on here. I got on some swag, the Rosetta Universe, the Jack Johnson hat. And so anyway, that's the way we roll around here. And also, if you are a live listener and you know who you are, you're watching this live, not on a podcast format or a BBC outlet. I want you to think about any questions you have for Elizabeth. She is an expert, and I don't say that casually, in Black history. And not just head knowledge, but she has, when you acquire an object, a document, you have to do a full 360 around it. And I would put her up against any Ph.D. in American history. And I think she would give them a run for their money. Because when you acquire something, you have to know what you're acquiring. And some people don't even know what they're selling before you acquire it. And you have to kind of, it's a cat and mouse game. You got to let them know, I don't know if I'm interested in this, but all the while you're just leaping for joy. I can't believe this is the holy grail of items. And here it is in my hands. And that's the kind of stuff that we're going to experience with Elizabeth this hour. So without any further ado, I write music. And so we're going to play one of my songs. It's actually the theme song for the Mischief Maker Show. I hope you like it. And it's kind of a cross between Frank Sinatra and the blues. Mel, let's go at it.
Value the Mischief Maker's attitude. Arms open wide, all gratitude. Asking what listen for the music, a cheerful tune, strange yet wise, misunderstood. That's the Mischief Maker attitude.
I think that was just a tease of the Mischief Maker attitude. I think we might have put up, I probably put the wrong link to that, but you got a feel for it, about the Mischief Maker attitude. And if you want to go to the link tree, you can listen to it. Go to YouTube, my YouTube channel, Freeman Institute, and hear the whole song. But you know what? There is a silver lining to this cloud of not hearing the whole song. We get more time with Elizabeth Meaders, which means, come on, Elizabeth. We'll treat of seeing behind the scenes of how we work things out here. I'd like for us to take a step back. I know you have some incredible artifacts and items to share with us, but I want us to kind of put a finger on your pulse. And if you could discuss a little bit about your own story, growing up with your sisters in Staten Island. Who were the people, the experiences that shaped your life, your desire to want to build and create a Black History collection?
Well, I'm one of 4 sisters, and I guess in a way I was blessed to have a grandmother, believe it or not, was the first African-American woman to have a car on Staten Island.
Wow.
And this particular grandmother was kind of a mean grandmother. And none of my other sisters and cousins were the least bit. Everybody said, ugh, grandma, ugh. But I used to write grandma passionate letters. Oh, I would love to visit you. Oh, grandma, please, can I ride in your car? So I was the pet. And as a result of being grandma's pet, I got tours of Staten Island and I got introduced to history because the whole side of her family was very history oriented. So as a youngster, I was riding around getting history lessons from a grandmother that nobody else wanted to be bothered with except for me. So as a result of that, I was hooked on African American history. And my grandparents had a moving and storage warehouse where they conducted auctions. And so I had a chance to see incredible antiques. And on my own, I would go into neighborhoods where wealthy people lived and I would inspect their garbage because I knew that wealthy people had wealthy garbage. So I would collect empty boxes and perfume bottles and vintage bags. So all my life, I have been a collector. And even now, my car, which I call Bessie, when we're riding around on its own, sometimes it stops in front of garbage. And I say, not now, Bessie, people are looking. So I'm just a total collector. And even at a young age, I was hooked on collecting.
But what was the very first artifact or document that you acquired? Do you remember that moment and what it was and the pathway to it?
Well, I think that maybe the first item was just a newspaper article about Jackie Robinson. I had this ferocious crush on him. And so I collected at the level of freebies. Wherever I could find a newspaper or a magazine, I would, make a scrapbook on my hero, Jackie Robinson. And then when I finally had a little money, I found out that there were actually shows that sold, mementos of these ball players. So I started going to shows, and little by little, my taste became more sophisticated because while I was only interested in sports, for the first time in my life, I was exposed to African American history in other formats. Because when you go to history shows, the dealer may have a specialty in sports, but because they're all over the place, they're picking up all kinds of things. So the more I saw, the greedier I got. And I just, loved history. And little by little, I was struck by the knowledge that African American history exists. And I didn't know anything about any of this.
Hmm.
So I got the collecting bug, and I just went overboard because I've been collecting for more than 70 years.
So your collection, I've been to your house a number of times, and it's just everywhere around your house, and it's just people say, and I say, it's the most comprehensive collection, Black history collection in America. Would you say that? And how many categories of would you say you have of Black history?
Well, I gave myself a challenge to document the entirety of the Black experience. So each of my collections is specific unto itself. And I have 10 specific collections that are, chronologically and comprehensively developed. And that's what makes my collection different from most collections. It's not the best because there's no such thing as the best. But what it is very comprehensive, encompassing topics that a lot of collectors maybe don't even know exist. So it's the result of an obsessive collector. And I have really captured the entirety of African American history because it was never taught in the public schools in America. So to go out and find out that this history exists and that it's interesting and amazing and also heartbreaking. So it was something that caught my soul and I never let go.
Hmm. Now, what motivates you after all these years? I'm not going to say how old you are, but what continues to motivate you to want, like if you saw something today or tomorrow that blew your mind, what goes on inside of you?
Well, what happens is each topic is like a puzzle. And when you're creating a puzzle, you know that you must have all of the missing parts or the story's not complete. So just knowing that there are pieces that exist out there and then trying to figure out how to get them, because some of the best stuff is already in the hands of best collectors. So sometimes you have to take another approach to enhance your collection. And by knowing what your other collectors have, you finally say, look, I'll trade you, Joel, I will trade you for my Jack Johnson item for your Ida B. Wells item that you know I need. So you become a bargainer. And I've knocked on your door and I'm not finished knocking. And you know that I have the best Jack Johnson collection.
Yes,
And
you do.
so I have to fill in wherever there's a need, that becomes your focus. And that's how the mind of collectors work.
Now, every collector has a holy grail. What do you consider is the top item, or three or four or five items in your collection that you would say, this is the holy grail in this particular category of items?
Well, the odd thing is whenever I talk about consecrated items, I always fall back into the area of military. Because you see, in this country, it's very important for African Americans to get credit for the fact that really in every single war, our numbers are the greatest numbers of the participants in the war. And this is the 250th anniversary of the founding of America, right? And America started with Crispus Attucks, an African American who was the very first to be killed in the creation of America, right? So it starts with an African American and then it ends with an African American spy whose name is James Armistead. He was able to ingratiate himself with Cornwallis, the general on the revolutionary side by the English. And so they trusted him because he told them a sob story about how much he hated being a slave. And so they didn't know that he could read and write. And he studied all of their plans and he delivered to Marquis de Lafayette, who in turn delivered to George Washington the plans that ended the Revolutionary War. So I want credit for that. I feel that in the 250th anniversary of the founding of America, start where the start is. And it started with an African American and it ended an African American. And that's the purpose of my collection. I call it acknowledgement. I want our history to be recognized, acknowledged, respected, and appreciated. And in military, we have, fought in every war. We have protected the country. We have enabled the democracy to strive. And along those lines, still talking about Crispus Attucks, this is an incredible medal. And this medal
There it is.
says Crispus Attucks, a Negro, the first to die in the Revolutionary War. And this is one of my missions. I call it acknowledgement. I want the contributions that Africans made to the creation of this baby nation. I want them to be acknowledged. That is my goal.
Now, can you give us a kind of an overview of the different categories that you have?
Well, as I said, the most important one is the military. But I have documented sports, and America runs on sports. We had our latest proof of that when the Knicks won. The city and the country went crazy. America is a sports-obsessed nation.
You went crazy.
Yeah, I did. I went so crazy that I made a deal with the Lord. I said, God, I hate to waste one of my special prayers on, I have a quota, but I'm going to give up one of my prayers because please let the Knicks win. And I was so happy. So I made a deal. That's how much their victory meant to me. So I have So now we're talking about military. I believe that I do. I never use the word best, but I believe that I have the best civil rights collection because the civil rights movement was a street revolution. So you must contain the primary evidence that ran the civil rights movement. And that is what I have. I also documented the civil wrongs movement. And then I have a magnificent collection on African American performance. I
Can we
have
hold? Can we put a pin in that? I want to go back to you mentioned sports, and I'd like for you to, when you mention a particular category, mention maybe 2 or 3 items in that category that have meant the most to you.
okay. I
With
certainly, yeah,
sports.
I would like to do that because, first of all, never made it on a large scale, but my sisters and I, we played basketball in Madison Square Garden. And this beauty over here is me as a youngster in
Oh my goodness.
1950. We played basketball because we were the local yokels who made it to Madison
Oh.
Square Garden. But this is a story that is even more incredible. Nobody knows that American sports history started with a former slave, and that slave was born right here on Staten Island. Staten Island is also called Richmond. His name was Bill Richmond. He was a boxer who went to England. He became a sensation in England. They worshiped this man who, the time that the country was being born, he was the first celebrity. He is the beginning of American sports history. His name is Bill Richmond, and nobody knows anything about him. But I have a full collection on him. Now,
And
this
when
is
and when
something.
Tom Molyneux, when he won the boxing between 2 plantations, he went immediately to England and didn't Bill Richmond, wasn't he his trainer?
He absolutely was his trainer, and he did his best with Molyneux, who did win some fights. And this guy, Richmond himself, there's some people on Staten Island who know that he was an Episcopalian. That was the religion where he was raised. And so they told me, Elizabeth, guess what? They've written a book about him. And the book goes 10 years. The person who wrote the book was a school teacher in England. And he spent 10 years going to every library and he documents the whole life of Richmond.
Wow.
So these people called me up and they said, guess what? The New York Times has a full-page story about Bill Richmond, and they're digging his grave. They want to find his grave.
Oh
They
my
didn't
goodness.
find it. But in England, even today, once a year, they give a celebration in honor of Bill Richmond, who was a slave born right here in Staten Island, and he's the beginning of American sports history. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, this is the Negro Leagues. And I just read recently in the paper that in Cooperstown, they are reviving the statistics. They decided to include the accomplishments of the Negro League players.
Wow.
And when they did that, they changed the whole order of who is number one. And Josh Gibson, a Negro League player, bumped out Ty Cobbs, and he was
Wow.
designated as the greatest, sports hero. And so they have gone to these old records of these clubs that were locked out, and they said, you have records. Let's take the whole topic of records. And when they did that, these Negro League records just demolished things.
Wow.
So, when you ask for all the topics, I also have religion. And in back of me, I have a picture of a Black Jew and I have a picture of a Muslim. And so in my religion collection, I have documented every single religion that African Americans were a
Wow.
part of. And then I've documented African American education, uh, the whole the whole field of it, because during slavery, it was actually a criminal case to be a reader. So the history of African American education, like the whole topic, is filled with so many interesting, surprising, unbelievable facts. So this particular collection and the approach that I took, it's inclusive. It breaks down every aspect of African American life: slavery, abolition, Reconstruction, and then little sideline collections like Marcus Garvey, Bill Pickett, aviation. So the collection, I didn't intend for it to go in all these directions because I did not know they existed. Once I found out how enormous African American history was, there was no stopping me.
Wow.
I'm obsessed, as you can see.
So you mentioned religion. We've talked about sports. Uh, you were starting to talk about another topic. What other category would you like to talk about? It's in your collection.
Well, one that is so important: women. I have
Mm-hmm.
documented women, and I would like to take just 1 minute to talk about women. Uh, in the early part of this country, we have 3 African American women who were self made millionaires. No other white who has everything in their favor reaches that status. And when women, black or white, went into a bank, they were laughed at. But can you imagine black women going into a bank and saying, I want to borrow $1 million to build a building? Well, they would be rushed out and maybe sent to the insane asylum. But these black women, when they chose to build a building, they went in with suitcases filled with money and paid cash.
Wow.
The very first one. See, some people think that the very first woman to be a self made millionaire was this lady whose name is Madam C.J. Walker. But Madam C.J. Walker was the student of this woman whose name is Annie Malone. But here's another one that beats them both. Her name is Mammy Pleasant, or Mary Rose Pleasant. And she was in in San Francisco, running boarding houses, and she had all kinds of enterprises. And this woman actually subsidized John Brown when he had his failed Harper's Ferry venture.
Yes.
She
Yes.
was one of his underwriters. She is the official first self-made American millionaire. And then she's followed by these 2 other incredible women who
Wow.
had beauty. They actually started the American franchise system, and they
Yeah.
don't get credit. Again, I said my theme is acknowledgement. Give credit where credit is due. And
Yeah.
then we have another,
Mary Kay, Avon. They were the first Mary Kay Avon
but
people.
we're talking about time. We're talking
Yes.
about chronology. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about who was first and
Yes.
how difficult it was for them to reach their goal. And then
Uh,
we had this woman, the very first American woman to found a bank. Can you imagine in the 20s, we're only talking like 30 and 40 years after slavery, that a black
Wow.
woman is going to found a bank? So I have a separate women's collection. And here's Ida B. Wells, who's waiting for a final piece from Joel Freeman. So we have women. And of course, the greatest woman to ever come out of the American institution is this woman, Harriet Tubman. And
Yes.
you see, people know about her, but then the next step is find the whole story. She was, of course, a person who ran an underground railroad, but oh, there's so much more to her story. So between this lady and this gentleman, African Americans have given America its two greatest heroes, a man who created a revolution without the use of a gun, and a woman who designed social structures for the people who finally were freed. So my women's collection fills an enormous hole in American history because nobody else has a collection like I have with women, period.
Now, what do you want to talk about next? And we're going to put a pin in it and take a break for our sponsor. But what do you want to talk about next?
What do I want to talk about next?
What category?
I think that maybe I would like to talk again about military. I want to add some other facts to the military collection.
And I want to hear about the Butler medal too. That was the most incredible
yeah,
medal.
Yeah,
but we'll hit that in just a few seconds here.
Mel is waiting.
Let's take a break for our sponsor, the Rosetta Universe.
Hi, I'm Joel Freeman, the founder of the Rosetta Universe. Join us in transforming this ancient artifact, the Rosetta Stone, into a modern metaphor for critical thinking and problem solving. Young people today are overwhelmed by information, but most do not have a roadmap for the practical use of that knowledge. By turning thinking into a simple 7-step Rosetta process, we are making it feel doable rather than intimidating. It shifts the focus from being smart to being disciplined, which is a game changer for many students who struggle. Our reach is for the following grade bands: K2, 3-5, 6-8, 9-12, college, and beyond. Give me a call with any wisdom and advice. Here's my personal cell, 410-991-9718. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
There it is, folks. Our sponsor is Rosetta Universe, and we're very grateful for the sponsorship. There's a little bit about the 7 steps of problem solving. And then also, it may sound a little bit off course, but we have the Jack Johnson belt. This is something I designed to help raise funds for the Rosetta Universe initiative. And we're making only 700 of these worldwide. So if you want one, you could go to the rosettauniverse.com, and there will be information how you can order one, acquire one, and every penny goes toward the nonprofit foundation work. So right now, we're going to bring back Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, there you are. We're going to talk about the military and the Butler medal. Are you there?
I'm here. And, the Butler medal, I think that in a sense, for most of my collecting life, that was the Holy Grail. That was the item that I wanted so badly. And finally, it came on the market, and I had to have it, and I was able to get it. And the Butler medal, it's kind of like a continuous pattern of African Americans and the military. They always were only brought in when there was no other choice. And in the case of the Butler medal, the Union generals said to Lincoln when he said, "You're going to have to start leading some of these black troops," and they were horrified. They all said, "We're not going to lead any darkies into battle." And he said, "You must do that. It's an order." So one of the generals, whose name was Benjamin Butler, he also had a unit that he had to take into the war. And when he did, he was astounded at the courage of these soldiers. And so when the war was over, he said, "I am going to buy 199 medals because I want to honor them because nobody else will." And so he went to Tiffany's and he brought 199 medals called the Butler Medal, named after him. And he presented them to the soldiers. And
each
then he
one?
Yes, each one. And he said, if I don't honor them, nobody will. And when the war was over, They were not even invited to the review that they had in Washington. And Butler went before the Congress and he said, may my arms fall from my body, may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth if I ever have a day in my life when I fail to honor these brave colored soldiers. So it brings tears to my
Wow.
eyes. And I would have to call these two medals my heartstrings because
Hold it up again. Hold it up again. The Butler Medal.
Now, this is the medal intact, but it comes with a ribbon and a bar across. But it's just an incredible, and it was designed by the top, medal designer on the staff of the
Tiffany's.
Tiffany Company. Yes, and
Now,
then
how did you acquire that? Because that is such a rare. I mean, 199 were made, and we know that things get lost, thrown away. Next generation doesn't care, and for you to have one of those 199 is astonishing to me.
well, I was like a watchdog with it, and one of the dealers that I deal with told me that he had it. And, I really had to pay a fortune for it because Civil War collectors are very intellectual, very well educated, and they know where these gems are. They know what's truly dramatically significant. So everybody was after it. It really cost me that this is the most expensive item that I ever brought. But, it was irrelevant. I had to have it. Even this medal, this Crispus Attucks medal, the dealer that I brought this from was somebody that I would call once in a while and I'd say, do you have anything for me? And he was really very hard to deal with. And he said, well, I saw a medal at a show and it was incredible, but you wouldn't pay that money. So I said, well, what was it? And he described this medal. I said, oh my God, I have to have it. He said, didn't you understand me? The show is over. And to my amazement, he sent out a mimeograph note to every dealer to see who had it. And he
Wow.
located the dealer. Then when he got it, he said, after I'm looking at this, I don't think I'm going to sell it. I do curse sometimes. So I had to curse and tell him that I had to have it. And he gave it to me. And I've had it for about 15 years. And every once in a while he calls me and he says, would you please let me buy that back? I want to know, are you crazy? Are you crazy? But, with military, this is a story in World War II where an African-American seaman was in a boat that exploded and he towed a whole raft filled with his fellow sailors to safety. And the news article talks about it and it says he received no acclaim for his deeds. And see, that's why I'm interested in acknowledgement. Please
Yes.
tell the stories that are hidden. Please give them some light. And then in World War II, there was a problem with the soldiers. They were sent down south, and all of the officers were white and they were true Southerners. And so there was a lot of trouble. So they said, what are we going to do with these niggers? And so somebody said, send them to the French. They'll take anything. And so they were all sent to France. And in France, they performed so great that in an unprecedented manner, the French government gave Croix de Guerre, their highest military
Wow.
honor,
Wow.
to whole units. And they stayed on the front and guarded their territory longer than any other troops in World War I. And
My
this
goodness.
shows they're called the Hellfighters. They came from Harlem. And this shows them being honored in a parade in New York City.
Wow.
Again, acknowledgement. And then this is another heroic African
Oh,
American,
yes.
and I have his medal, which is incredible. He was forced to prove that he was worthy of staying in the service and keeping his position. So he rode a horse from one state to the other so that he could be reinstated into service. And this happens to
Please give
be
his name so for people interested.
Colonel Charles Young.
Yes.
And this one here says, time to do the right thing for Colonel Young, because he was, mistreated. And they have proof that he was mistreated. So this is a tribute. And I have a large collection on him. I have his whole desk set and various other things, not to mention an incredible medal that the whole state of Ohio gave to Colonel Charles Young.
Wow.
And this happens to be a drum beater that was inscribed to the drummer of the 54th Mass. His name was Miles Tobin. And it's engraved because at one time it belonged to the Veterans Post. And then somehow it came into the hand of fanatics such as myself.
54th Massachusetts. Yeah, for the Civil War.
Yes, the drummer. Now, I also want to say that I certainly do collect slavery, abolition, and slavery is such a heartbreaking topic, but you almost can't deal with it because there's so many secrets that we will never know. But one of the things that I collect are runaway slave ads, because there's always a tidbit of information and there's more to the story. Now, some of these ads that I have, one of them says that this one who ran away, he has blue eyes. Now, what kind of a black child will have blue eyes? Why, the child must be the child of the owner. And another one says he plays violin and he has it with him. And another one says this slave speaks French and English, and is a great cook. So I love reading the nature of these runaways, and I have a huge collection. Then there's a saying that we all know, which is a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this is one of those kinds of pictures, because after the slave had his freedom, there was a book written that there was a situation that was worse than slavery. And I said, oh, nothing could be worse than slavery. And I read this book and I had to put it down because it made me cry. After slavery, there was a practice called leasing of slaves, leasing of the freedmen. And what they would do is when a freedman was on a corner standing, he had no job, he was arrested for loitering. And then he was given a fine. And the fine immediately had huge increases. So the family could never pay the fine. And they took all of these people, children as well as adults. These are some children caught up in this system called convict labor. And these were not really convicts. They were stolen people who were worked to death, reconstructing the South, because the South was a mess after the Civil War. So you had and they had no prisons to put them in. So they put them in wagons like the circus has, and they're attached to each other. They have no room. It's very much like the boat that they came over here on. So this was called Lend-Lease. So the poor African American went from slavery to Lend-Lease. And this is another story that has a lot of manifestations, and it deserves to be investigated. Now, I said before that we have a nation that's, sports obsessed. And what is great with sports figures is when there is a sport successful figure, but he gives back to his community. And that's the case of Jackie Robinson. And that's the case of Muhammad Ali, who said that he's the greatest. And somebody said to him, you're so conceited when you say that. And he said, I don't just mean me. I mean you, me, we are the greatest. So he's encouraging us to love ourselves. and he did so many humanitarian things, and he's a folk hero. He became the most recognized person in the world, an African American.
Now, Jackie Robinson, you went to the estate sale, and his widow, what did she say to you?
Well, she was glad to, well, she was surprised that a female was in the field, period, and she was just happy to know that, not only was I a collector, but I was emotionally connected and that I respected him for all the levels that he was. You know, he said, and I want to quote what he said, a life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. So at all times, he was saying, you don't have to worship me. You have to get out here and make the world better just like I do. So he was a very noble, wonderful person. And as I said, she should have been beware of me because I had a crush on him. And I have a wonderful Jackie Robinson collection. This is his Legion, American Legion hat.
And you have also the chock full of nuts
Yes,
desk.
I have. Yeah, I have his desk plaque, and what I have that's wonderful is I have some letters that Japanese fans wrote him, and I have what I go after is uh, trophies and awards that talk about his humanity more than his statistics. So I have a really wonderful Jackie Robinson collection because I always lit up when I knew that something was available. So
And you're
he's my
also at
guy.
you're at the Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah, as a matter of
Estate
fact,
sale. Tell us about that.
yeah,
Maybe we
I
can, we can
went
move
to
into the realm of sports of entertainment too, arts and entertainment.
And with Sammy Davis, he was misunderstood, and yet he was really very deeply involved in the civil rights movement. And so I'm very happy that the NACP recognized him. And this is his Spin Gone medal, which is the greatest medal that
Wow,
African Americans attribute to an important contributing humanitarian. And this is a picture of him receiving the
that's at the
Spin Gone.
NAACP,
Yes,
right?
the NACP Spin Gone Award.
Wow. And you picked that up at the estate sale.
Yeah, I really came up with a lot of wonderful things. I have a nice Sammy Davis collection. All of these people that have really made an impact with the whole world, I try to focus on them. And then I try to see if I can find those that we know nothing about. You're familiar with Mr. Costin, our mutual friend.
Yes, yes.
And from him, I became very interested in aviation. And of all my collections, there were more shocks in aviation than in any other topic because African Americans in the late 1800s, they were sailing in air balloons and they were called aeronauts. And I said, wow, the history starts that far back. And that's what interests me and fascinates me when we can take history, back and then bring it to the present time. And so that is the story of AV. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can see it, but over in the corner, I have a rare and beautiful picture of Bessie
Bessie
Coleman.
Coleman. Oh
Yeah,
yes,
and
I've seen it.
yeah, and the story with her is she had to learn a foreign language in order to go to a school where they, in France, where they would give her a license. And, poor Bessie, like so many of the other aviators, they go to the junkyard and buy any piece of airplanes that they can afford, and they're all not safe. So she ultimately does die in an airplane crash. As a matter of fact, all of these aviators had a very short lifespan because
Wow.
they're all riding in unworthy vehicles. But nevertheless, they're trying and they're doing incredible things.
Now, discuss a little bit about your civil rights, civil wrongs collection, and what about that caused you to want to acquire certain items from that?
Well, when I was younger, I was active in the civil rights movement. I was active in CORE and the NACP, and my own family started the NACP on Staten Island, and they were pivotal in the whole survival
Mm-hmm.
of our unit. So, once you know the whole enormity of the civil rights movement, you can't be a standby. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
in it. And so I got into it. And what I did that I know is a little bit different is I began to look for letters. And I wanted the letters to be on both sides of the issue. So I have some hate-filled letters
Mm-hmm.
written by some of the worst of the racist haters. And
Mm-hmm.
then I have some wonderful letters written by those who we know to be important in the success of the civil rights movement. So I have a very large collection of letters with, really powerful civil rights content. But I have everything that is the essence of the civil rights movement, which was a street revolution. So you have to start from the street to build a good civil rights collection, and it has to have primary items that definitely document the actual civil rights movement. So that's the approach that I took. I was always looking for primary items and
Mm-hmm.
things like posters and bill and pinbacks, because when you're wearing a poster, carrying a poster and wearing a t-shirt and a pin, you're a walking billboard. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the essence of the civil rights movement, because it's a street movement. And I
Yes.
read that after George Floyd's protests were over, that a lot of the museums went and, gathered up anything that was discarded. And I said, boy, I wish I could have done that.
Wow.
And in no time, something is historic. What happened yesterday is
Mm-hmm.
history. And so the nature of a street revolution means go out in the street and get what the street has. And then you will have a true civil. Don't just see what's happened with a lot of the civil rights museum is they create memorials, which are good, but they're not museums. They are memorials. A museum has to have primary items to have
Mm-hmm.
integrity.
If you could have an evening with any one of the people represented by pieces of your collection, who would that be, and what would you want to talk about?
Um, I think it would be Harriet Tubman,
Hmm.
and I would like to ask her, about her social problems, because I read that she would gather apples, and as soon as she had property of her own, she grew apples so that she could feed people, and uh, when Queen Victoria had her celebration, Harriet Tubman was the only American that she made gifts to, and she was very familiar with her achievements. And so one gentleman came to own these memorabilia that Harriet Tubman had, because he was close to her surviving family. And so this gentleman, Mr. What was Blockson, he gave these things
Mm-hmm.
to the museum in Washington. But we do have, like, her Bible, the shawl that Queen Victoria gave her. But she was very creative, and she designed like a system for taking in senior citizens and homeless people. And
Mm-hmm.
she did so much more than just her work bringing people out of slavery. During the war, we know that she was a scout and that she was a spy. But what happened in the Civil War is women followed their men into freedom, and they ended up being in these places in the South. And when the military saw all these women, they said, we can't feed your family and you. And so Harriet Tubman organized the women. She said, look, you have two hands. Use those hands to get them sweet potatoes out of the ground and make sweet potato pies, and go get them dirty clothes and wash them, and get that needle and thread and fix them. She organized the whole system of survival. So she was so brilliant. And while we give her credit, we don't give her the full impact of all that she
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, Felix George says I would choose Sojourner Truth. So everybody has someone they'd want to hang out for an evening with and talk about things.
Well, you know what? I
Thank
really
you, Felix.
feel that Sojourner Truth was not on the same level as Harriet Tubman, because Sojourner Truth was primarily a self-promoter. She didn't put her life on the line like this lady. She didn't do multiple things. She lectured and sold her pictures. So I think that Sojourner Truth was a phony. That's my opinion.
That's your opinion. You're sticking with it.
Yeah, she was a great orator,
Yeah.
and she gave these speeches and sold a picture. So that was really her livelihood. It was not acts of courage, and it was not, designing systems.
Yeah.
So I
And
think she was a self-promoter.
And Harriet was a gun-toting person, and if someone wanted to make trouble or wanted to go back, she says, I'll shoot you if you want to do that.
Yeah. And she, she thought the whole thing through.
Yes.
She had medicine to make the babies sleep so they wouldn't cry. I mean, the brilliance of her strategies. I'm so glad we're, beginning to appreciate her. And I really think that there should be a day, a memorial day for Harriet Tubman, because she is the greatest and most courageous woman to come out of America. And I
Yes.
don't think there's even a runner-up.
Well, she at 12, I think it was, she was in a store in Maryland, and on the Eastern Shore, and a young kid came running in from another plantation, and the overseer came running in after him, and he told her to hold him, and she refused. He picked up a paperweight, threw it, hit Harriet in the head, and she had frontal lobe epilepsy for the rest of her life, where she saw these ecstatic visions, and then sometimes mid-sentence she'd fall asleep for 6-7 minutes, and then wake up and complete the sentence she started. And that's, to me, for someone with a diminutive stature, going
Yes.
back to the South to bring people north on the Underground Railroad, and knowing that she could fall asleep at any moment, I can barely wrap my head around it.
Yeah, and she was able to rescue all of those slaves at the Kambashi River. And one of the
Yes,
newspapers talked about it, and they said, and she did all of this, and she is only 4 feet 11 inches tall. So she,
Well,
her story has so many levels to it.
yeah, Felix, yes, she did work in the anti-lynch movement. There are many that worked in that, and you definitely are in the Sojourner Truth camp as the most influential, and Elizabeth Meaders is definitely in the Harriet Tubman camp, and both of you are winners. Now, Elizabeth, our time is nearing up, and if every listener could leave this conversation remembering just one lesson from your life's work, what would you hope that lesson would be?
Well, I started with this word acknowledgement. I want African American history, all of the impact, to be acknowledged. And I want to promote a rebuttal to think that people actually feel that African Americans did not have an impactful history. That breaks my heart. So I want people to recognize the fact that African American history is healing, and it intellectually expands your mind and your ability to take in new knowledge and put it in perspective. Because of all of the nationalities in America, African Americans have been here the longest. So what were we doing here? we were building the country, because really you had to be here to build here. And so many others came after the cake was out of the oven. And so I really would like a renaissance of belief in which African American history is put in its proper place in American history, because essentially it's the essence of American history.
Yes. And Elizabeth, this collection is for sale, right? Can you say that in closing?
Well, I think I told you a story, Joel, about a woman. I was on a television program and a woman said, "Can I send you something?" And I kept saying, "What in the world would she want to send me?" And to my amazement, she sent me this oil painting.
Ah, what a
And
beautiful image of you.
yeah, she
Wow.
sent me, and I have the same vest on. And I'm telling you that story because the point I would like to make is you never know who has a feeling for American history. And I have a collection that's looking for someone who loves history, who would like to make a legacy to their self in honor of American history. And then I would love for them to share it with the cultural landscape of America, so that, again, we can all profit from all the gaps we have in our knowledge about the wonderful contributions made by African Americans, the sacrifices, the love, the patriotism, all of the gifts that they have given to America. And they need to be showcased, they need to be embraced. So maybe out here in your audience, there may be an American who would like to embrace this collection, take it to another level. I am 93. I don't mind mentioning my age because I've used all of those 93 years to create what is called the world's most comprehensive collection. But now I need help with this collection. Maybe
Yeah.
somebody out there is willing to be a helper who wants to embrace the glory of American history.
Pete, I wish we could take that question, but we're over time actually. I went over a little bit with Elizabeth. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for taking your time to be with us this evening, and I wish you all the best. We'll be talking afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have just experienced another episode of the Mischief Maker broadcast. Hit the subscribe button. Connect at chiefmischiefmaker.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And hopefully, you are now a bit closer to becoming a mischief maker in your part of the world.